Welcome back, Karptastic ladies and gentlemen, to another Meta Monday episode in this TCGO series. Yes, it's that time of the week, and we are going to take a look at a Greninja BREAK deck, an updated list after the recent states championships and regionals and whatnot, because there has risen some consensus about how you should build a competitive Greninja BREAK deck list. So we are going to take a look at the cards that you will find in most competitive lists out there. If you want to skip to certain parts of the video, just click the annotations that I will have put on the left hand side of the screen, or click the timestamps in the description. Most of you will be familiar with Greninja BREAK, the 170 hit points comeback Pokemon with a giant water shuriken ability, which lets you put 6 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon if you can discard a water energy from your hand and if Greninja BREAK is in the active spot. Let's go to a quick general overview of the deck list, and you may already notice one Pokemon here which doesn't seem to have a place in this list, and that is Dunsparce, and I cannot click on it because that overview is still bugged. Dunsparce over here. We'll quickly go over the card itself. Dunsparce has 40 hit points, a glare attack which takes a single colorless energy, flip a coin if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed, and then also a second bite attack which does 10 damage as the base and 10 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. And very interesting to note is that Dunsparce has got free retreat. Now, why is Dunsparce in this deck? Well, the main reason why it's in my list here, and why you definitely should not put it in your competitive list, is because normally you would have the Jirachi promo, which I do not own. This one here with the Stardust ability, the Stardust attack takes a colorless energy, does 10 damage, and you get to discard a special energy to your opponent's active Pokemon. If you do, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to Jirachi in the next turn of your opponent. So normally this is what you would include as the sidekick, as the backup attacker in Greninja BREAK, because this is a great counter against Night March, and the current standard format is full of Night Marches. So you'd at least want to include two copies of Jirachi, maybe even 3. But I do not own Jirachi on the TCGO, so I cannot include it, and it costs a hell of a lot of packs, which I do not currently want to spend on this card. So that's why I included a replacement for Jirachi. So again, normally you will not include Dunsparce in your competitive deck, but you will include 2 or 3 copies of Jirachi. I just included 1 copy of Dunsparce here to replace it, and included some other trainers in its place. And why did I choose Dunsparce? Well, 2 reasons. One is the free retreat. If you start off with Dunsparce, it's super easy to just retreat into your Froakie or your Frogadier and go for that water duplicates. The water duplicates from the Frogadier, which makes this deck tick, because you get to search your deck for up to 3 Frogadier, put them onto your bench, and then you have to shuffle your deck afterwards, making it a whole lot easier to evolve in your Greninjas here and in your Greninja BREAK. And the second reason is because of its glare attack. This glare attack is kind of like the Stardust here is a weaker version of the Stardust, because if we flip heads, we will paralyze our opponent's active Pokemon, and if it's Night March, we will paralyze Joltik or Pumpkaboo, and then they cannot attack. So it would be like as if we had discarded their DCE and prevent effects in the next turn, except that this requires a coin flip, so it is a fair amount weaker, but it's still a stalling tactic, and it's a stalling tactic which has free retreat, and also has got a pretty good second attack, which kind of synergizes well with Greninja BREAK, because we are spreading damage counters everywhere. So we could potentially go for a second bite, but we most likely will not, since it does take 2 energy, and we do not run a DCE in this deck. We only run water energy, 7 water energy, and then 1 splash energy. This splash energy allows us to get back our Greninjas into our hand when they get knocked out, so we can evolve a benched Frogadier or a benched Greninja into a Greninja BREAK. Let's take a look at the Greninjas themselves. I have a 1-3 split of the Greninja from the XY expansion with the baby water shuriken. Does the same as a giant water shuriken, except for the fact that this Greninja does not need to be in the active spot to use the water shuriken, and only puts 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then the other Greninja from the Breakpoint expansion with the Shadow Stitching attack hits for 40 and takes a single colorless energy. Then until the end of your opponent's next turn, each Pokemon your opponent has in play in his or her hand and in his or her discard pile has no abilities. This can be quite useful to prevent our opponent from using Shaman and setting up, for example, but it's also very useful in a mirror match, because if we are facing a Greninja Break deck, then we can use Shadow Stitching and then our opponent cannot use his water shurikens. Obviously our opponent will try to do the same against us, so we need to find some other counter of dealing with an opponent's Greninja Break attack. And one of them could be the Dunsparce that we have here. Another one will be a trainer card, which we will go into a little bit later. And then the second attack is the Moonlight Slash, which takes a water energy, hits for 60 as a base, and then if you return this water energy to your hand when you use this attack, you do 20 more damage, so that's 80 total. Slap on a Muscle Band, which I do run 2 copies of, then that's 100 just for a single energy, and that's pretty good indeed. Combine it with the Water Shurikens and you've got a KO pretty quickly right there. And finally, obviously, we have the Froakie, 4 copies of Froakie with the Bubble, which again is an attack that can stall, just like Dunsparce attack. You have to flip a coin, and if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Very good reason to include at least one other basic Pokemon besides your 4 Froakies is to not mulligan too much, because if you only have 4 Froakies, then you will be mulligan quite a lot, giving your opponent a fair amount of cards in his starting hand. Then let's go over the trainer cards. First off, let's have a look here. We have the Rough Seas to heal up our Greninjas a little bit, and this Rough Seas comes in handy quite a lot against Trevenant with the Silent Fear, which spreads 3 damage counters all across the board. We just put Rough Seas down, we heal them off, and we have no problem with Trevenant anymore, really. As well as against Toad, if you are facing Toad, you can heal off a lot of damage from the Toad, because the Toad hits for 30 or 50 with a Muscle Band, so if he hits for 50, you heal off more than half of the damage from the Toad, making it very tough or a very long-lasting task for the opponent to knock out your Greninjas. Then 2 Wallies to evolve a little bit quicker into our Greninja Breaks, or to evolve into our Froakie on our first turn if we don't have a Dive Ball or a Level Ball to get out our Frogadiers. 4 copies of Dive Ball, 2 copies of Level Ball in this deck. We've also got 1 Rare Candy. This Rare Candy can be used to evolve a benched Froakie immediately into a Greninja. Typically you will not want to evolve your Froakie in the active spots if you at the start of the game, because you'll want to go for that water duplicates, get some Frogadier on the bench. And then a trainer which you will find in most competitive list, or a supporter, is the Ace Trainer. Ace Trainer is very useful in this deck because typically your opponent will take at least 1 or 2 knockouts before you have set up your Greninja Break. So you'll have knocked out, for example, the Froakie or the Dunsparce here, if we started with the Dunsparce and wanna give it to our opponent as an easy prize. And then we can use this Ace Trainer, draw into 6 cards and bring our opponent down to 3 cards. And 3 cards, that's not a whole lot. Oftentimes you will find that your opponent is stuck with some cards that he cannot really use. It's better than a Judge, much better in this deck than a Judge. 4 copies of Sycamore for draw support, 1 Skyla here. Skyla can help us search out our Rough Seas or a Muscle Band if we want to get that KO, if we need a Muscle Band for a KO. Can also help us to search out the Rare Candy or Professor's Letter if we need some energies in hand. We can search a Professor's Letter, or we can just search for a Dive Ball and search for a Greninja with the Dive Ball. We could even search for a Town Map if we want to reveal what's in our prizes. For example, if we know we have some energies prized and we are going to take a knockout with an energy in hand, we could Skyla for Town Map if we don't have the Town Map in hand, reveal our prizes, then go for the knockout with the energy that we have in hand. We use that energy for the Water Shuriken, and then we can take another energy from the prizes and use that energy with another water shuriken, for example if you are switching between Greninja breaks. So this can definitely come in handy if you know that some energies are prized or some other important cards. And then finally the last item card we could, for example, get out with Skyla is Buddy-Buddy Rescue. And this is kind of like the Super Rod, which I also did not discuss yet. Super Rod is quite obvious. You get back a combination of Pokemon and energies, up to 3 of them, with this card. So mainly you'll be getting back Pokemon with the Super Rod. But this Buddy-Buddy Rescue acts as a very quick Super Rod, which allows you to get back 1 Pokemon from your discard pile straight to your hands, unlike the Super Rod, which makes you put the Pokemon into your deck. You could get back a Greninja or a Frogadier with this Buddy-Buddy Rescue and speed up your process of evolving your benched Frogadiers or Greninjas into Greninja breaks if you have had some knockouts beforehand on those Pokemon. Then one Startling Megaphone to get rid of pesky Fighting Fury Bells, which make us which force us to put out more water shurikens than we want to knock out our opponent's EXs or opponent's basics. So we'll want to get rid of Fighting Fury Belts with the Startling Megaphone. Certainly, for example, against Night March, with a Fighting Fury Belt, Pumpkaboo has 100 hit points, so we need 2 water shurikens on a Pumpkaboo to knock it out. We'll want to get rid of that Fighting Fury Belt, so we just need that 1 water shuriken to get rid of that Pumpkaboo. And then let's see, we have the one Lysandre. Lysandre can come in handy to, for example, Lysandre out a Hoopa and stall while we place damage counters around the board on our opponent's Pokemon, and as well just to get a knockout with, for example, the Moonlight Slash here on you never know, on a Shaman in combination with a baby water shuriken. And then finally there is the last supporter in this deck is the Fisherman. Fisherman makes us put 4 basic energy cards from our discard pile into our hand, and I think this does not need any explanation, since yeah, we just want those energy cards in our hand for the water shurikens. That's basically it. I think that is fairly obvious. And that's it for the deck analysis, I believe. I've got a feeling I kind of forgot to mention something here, but I don't quite remember what it was. Alright, I had to quickly look up my original list because I was right, I was indeed forgetting to talk about something, and that's because I actually took out the card during testing, since I'm talking about Shauna here, since I wasn't really running into the mirror match, so I replaced Shauna with a Sycamore. But the card I wanted to talk to you about is Shauna, and this is the card I was talking about as a tech against the mirror match, against when you're facing Greninja Break. So besides Dunsparce, one of your cards that you will be using in the mirror match is Shauna, and Shauna will help you since it will be very tough for either you or the opponent to take a knockout, since you can just keep switching between Greninjas, heal up with Rough Seas, and you will be using Shadow Stitching to prevent your opponent from using abilities, so you'll be hitting for 60 at most with that Muscle Band. That is not a whole lot, and healing off with Rough Seas is very easy. So either you can increase your damage output with Dunsparce possibly, or you can maybe stall your opponent from using Shadow Stitching with the Glare. That could be a possibility, but most likely the matchup will go to that person who has the most cards in deck, who manages his resources the best, because eventually there will be possibly a deck out, and Shauna will help you to shuffle back cards into your deck without making your opponent do the same. So if your opponent doesn't have a Shauna, he has really no way of preventing a deck out in the long run, but if you are running Shauna, you do. So Shauna will help with that, and I will actually leave the Shauna in the list for now, since this was my original list. So here it is. Here is a general overview of the list. If you have any questions, if you don't feel like I explained something too well and want some more explanation about it, just hit me up down below in the comments. Let me know how you would run the list and which card you would take out for Jirachi. Obviously, I would recommend taking out Dunsparce for Jirachi, but as well the Town Map. I could see the Town Map get rid of for Jirachi, as well as possibly the one Trainer's Mail maybe, or a Professor's Letter, or the Buddy-Buddy Rescue. So techie cards like that. I think the supporters are pretty much necessary. Skyla could maybe be replaced, but I quite like it in this list, so just let me know which card you would take out for Jirachi. And for now, we'll call it here. We'll go into a tournament and see if we can pull off a win. Leave a like if you enjoy the video, if you enjoy the deck analysis, if you enjoy the upcoming battles, and subscribe to my channel for more competitive, silly and fun deck ideas, and I'll see you in the tournament. Oops, daisies, I don't think we'll be playing tournaments today. I completely forgot. Tournaments are shut down at this point. Same goes for the trade and the code redemption. Because there were some problems with that, and they took the tournaments down at the same time that they took down the trade, so we will just have to make do with the versus ladder, and we will dive right into the first battle in the versus ladder. Maybe find a mirror match. That would be pretty cool if we could find a mirror match. Show off the use of Shauna that I in this deck, and potentially Dunsparce. There is a... Oh my goodness, we found a mirror match straight away. DNG8 with a Greninja BREAK deck, I believe so. We will start off first. It's definitely helpful for us to start off first, evolve first and stuff like that. Look at that, we get a pretty darn good hand right there. The only thing we are really missing is energies. And this is definitely a Greninja BREAK deck. So what we are going to need is for our Shauna not to be prized, and to at least set up 2 Greninja BREAKs, and hopefully before my opponent can even do so. That's the ideal situation. We could... Oh my goodness, my opponent is mulligan quite a lot. We are very lucky to have no mulligan, because our opponent is going to give us some more cards because he is a mulligan here. That's number 4, I think. Number 4 or number 5 already. We are just going to draw into a crazy amount of cards. That is... Oh wow, that is very unfortunate for my opponent. I think he even runs more basics than we do, because we saw Octillery. You don't typically see Octillery being played in competitive Greninja lists anymore. And there is another Froakie as well as a Dunsparce. I'm going to keep the Dunsparce in hand for now. There's no real point going with it. And our opponent starts off with a Remoraid. What we will do is we have an energy in hand. We are definitely not going to go with Sycamore. We are immediately going to evolve into Frogadier, I think. Yeah, we are immediately going to evolve into Frogadier. And we'll keep the energy in hand. If my opponent Lysandre out the Froakie in the next turn, they will Skyla for a dive ball and evolve the Froakie. For now, we'll just pause the turn, and then we can attach that energy to whichever Pokemon that we want to. We could see a Judge from my opponent, so we could definitely see a Judge if my opponent plays that. Judge or Lysandre. He goes for a Froakie of his own. He's going to try and set up as well. If he finds a Wally, he could go for a water duplicates before we do. But right now we are looking pretty darn good here. We are definitely looking pretty darn good. We need to be wary of the deck out. We have a ton of cards in our hand. Ideally, I do not want to discard any of them with Sycamore. Certainly not in a mirror match. There we get a dive ball. I'm not going to use the dive ball just yet, I think. Or maybe I will. I will get out a Greninja with the shadow stitching. That's the most important Greninja to use in this mirror match. I already saw from that brief look at my deck that we have 2 more copies of it, so that's good. And we will evolve the Froakie on the bench into that Greninja. Then we'll use the Frogadier with the water duplicates. And do we want to actually use Shauna? I think I will use Shauna as well. And I will get out a Professor's Letter, so we can draw into some more energies and potentially go for our water shurikens before our opponent does. find a Greninja with Shadow Stitching as well. I think that's our best bet here. So we'll hit for the water duplicates. Oh, look at that. We get 3 Frogadiers going. That is the maximum amount of Frogadiers you can get going. That is wonderful. I think my opponent should be pretty scared right now of us. I think we are looking very, very good. Next turn we will probably retreat into the Frogadier. My opponent evolves the Octillery. He does need a Floatstone now to be able to retreat that Octillery. I'm not sure if that was a good call from my opponent, unless he has a Floatstone in hand, or maybe a switching card. The switch goes for an Ultra Ball. Discards a Muscle Band and a Break. So we know my opponent runs Muscle Band. That's important because that increases his damage output from the Shadow Stitching by quite a bit. Puts down another Froakie, and he's going to get back the Greninja Break with the Super Rod. To then fill up his hand, so he used the Super Rod to draw into one more card with Octillery. And I think he's digging for the Floatstone right now. I think that's what he's digging for. So he's going to use another Level Ball for another Froakie. I think he will get out another Froakie. Yeah, he does. He does get out another Froakie. What we'll most likely do, if we get to use our Water Shurikens, and I think we will most likely Water Shurikens one of those Froakies from my opponent's bench. It's an easy knockout. So, alright, let's see if we can maybe get a Dive Ball from this. We do not get a Dive Ball, we get a Level Ball. Might as well get out the Level Ball. Put down another Froakie on our bench. The last Froakie in our deck apparently. And then we will evolve into the Break. We'll retreat the... Do I want to retreat the... Yeah, maybe I want to use Wally first. Or Skyla for Wally. Skyla for a Dive Ball. No, I'm gonna use Wally, and I'm gonna Wally the Frogadier in the active spot, so we have free retreat. Gonna evolve into another Greninja with the Shadow Stitching, and then we will retreat this Greninja into the Greninja Break. Use the Water Shurikens. Get rid of one of those Froakies. Yeah, we are definitely outspeeding our opponent by a mile here. My goodness, and we even get another Dive Ball. Let's get out another Greninja with the Shadow Stitching. Look at that. Oh my goodness, this is some power play right here from us. And then we will hit for the Shadow Stitching, so that if my opponent gets out any Greninja breaks, he cannot use the Water Shurikens, and he cannot use Abyssal Hands either in his turn. So he is stuck with the 3 cards in his hand. Just get a VS Seeker for a Wally, and he's going to Wally the Frogadier with the energy most likely into the Shadow Stitching Greninja. And does he have what it takes to retreat the Octillery? I believe not. So we are definitely at an advantage right here. And I'm actually going to opt to... Do I want to Lysandre out? That's maybe not. I'm going to get back 1 energy with the Fisherman here. Use my Water Shurikens while I can. Giant Water Shuriken and put it onto the Greninja with the Shadow Stitching. And then we will hit for another Shadow Stitching ourselves. If my opponent finds a Rough Seas, he could start healing up the damage I put on the Greninja there. There is the Greninja Break. If we draw into a Rough Seas, we are not going to put it down just yet. We don't want to allow our opponents to heal up before we can. He does get 2 energies, but he cannot use them with the Water Shuriken. He can just attach them to the Octillery to retreat it, but the Octillery is going to go down. So if I were my opponent, I would attach them to the Frogadier possibly. And there is our Shauna. Our Shauna is in deck. That is huge. We can reshuffle our hand here. What I'm going to do right now is go for another water shuriken, I think. Because we still can, so I'm going to go for another water shuriken. Use my Fisherman to get back that 1 energy. A little bit silly, but we gotta take advantage of it while we can. Put it onto the Greninja Break again. And I will hit for the Shadow Stitching. Get that knockout. What will my opponent promote? If he promotes the Frogadier, we are going to Lysandre out the Greninja Break. There's a Rough Seas. No need to put it down just yet. He just promotes the Greninja Break, so we don't need to use our Lysandre. We can just let our hand fill up and then use a Shauna. And there's a Rough Seas from my opponent, so my opponent did find a Rough Seas of his own. I would love to find a Muscle Band actually. And a victory for us. Look at that. Our opponent stood no chance anymore, I think. He could have gone for the deck out for sure. He could have tried that, but I think we could have gotten enough knockouts before that would have happened. Because we were looking pretty solid right there. We could have even afforded to lose our own Greninja breaks, let them get knocked out while we use our Moonlight Slash to get knockouts on my opponent's Pokemon. So that was a pretty convincing win from us right there. We set up really well, really quickly right there. And I think that's partially because of the Wally. I think the Wally helped us out big time. Let's find ourselves another opponent. Hopefully it's not gonna be a mirror match this time around. 1 mirror match is enough for the day. Alright, I had to make a little cut because the previous match was another mirror match. Basically it went a little bit the same. It was longer than the first match, but the outcome was the same and the process was the same. So I'm gonna cut it out of the recording. We'll start off first. We are most likely facing Night March against Pumpkinhead Pumpkinhead 2-2. Yeah, the outcome was the same. So there's no point showing this similar match twice, I think. We are going to move into this Night March matchup and see how Greninja fares against the Night March. It should have a chance, but we don't have Jirachi here, so that is a problem for us, not having Jirachi. We will get out another Froakie for sure, because the one in the active spot is going to go down most likely. And we have a pretty bad hand. We'll get out some energies, thin out our deck a little bit, and then we will we'll end our turn. Luckily we have the Buddy-Buddy Rescue to get back the Froakie that will get knocked out. To bench that Froakie, we need as many benched Pokemon as we can. This is for sure not going to be an easy matchup for us without the Jirachi. Our Dunsparce could come in handy here to try and stall, but we don't have it. We don't have it in hand. We don't have it anywhere near us. And we don't have any way to get to it. So we'll have to wait and see till it pops up, till it comes out of the deck to help us out. There's already 2 Lampons in the discard pile. So my opponent just needs another Night Marcher in the discard pile. It shouldn't be too hard for my opponent to do that. There's a Trainer's Mail. Very likely we will see another Battle Compressor, or we could even see a what is it called? A Acrobike. Although I do not really like Acrobikes in a Night March deck. And there's another Shaman. So my opponent seems to be stuck with 4 cards in hand that he cannot really use. We might actually survive this turn. Oh no, never mind. There's the Battle Compressor. He drew into the Battle Compressor. That's too bad for us. Yeah, if only we had a Wally in our first turn. We could have Wallied this Froakie on the bench, possibly. And then another Wally in our second turn. Then we could evolve from the hand and Wally into the break. Knock out this Pumpkaboo with a Shuriken in our second turn. That would have been pretty cool, but we will still be able to go for the water duplicates, which is good. We just see 4 Lampons in a discard pile. That's all that we see. My opponent discards his hand, discards a DCE. That is good. That is good to see. And a Hex Maniac as well as VS Seeker. So we will see one less Hex Maniac being used. Hex Maniac being a very good counter to our deck. It's a little bit scary that my opponent has access to the Hex Maniac. But he can only use it 3 more times. Except for if he has Puzzle of Time. There's VS Seeker. If he runs Puzzles of Time, he can use it a couple more times for sure. Actually, like 5 times total. If he uses Puzzles of Times twice to get it. Discards a Joltik, so he still has a lot of Night Marches in deck. He's down to 27 cards, benches a Joltik, which we could actually knock out with just a baby Shuriken. We just need to be able to see if we can get off a water Shuriken. If my opponent does not use that Hex Maniac, and that's what I'm worried about. My opponent using that Hex Maniac, and my opponent having VS Seekers to recycle it, as well as Puzzles of Time. And that's why you need Jirachi to counter your opponent. That way they cannot knock out your Greninjas while they are using Hex Maniac, and you can get rid of their DCE that way as well. Run them out of DCE. So hopefully our Dunsparce might be able to come in and paralyze our opponent so he cannot get the knockout. My opponent does not have too many switching cards, most likely. Maybe he runs 1 switch or something. Floatstone doesn't get around paralysis, so there's a knockout on our Froakie for 140 damage, and my opponent takes the first prize of the game. If we could get a Ace Trainer, that would be really nice as well. Having the Ace Trainer, we will get back the Froakie from our discard pile and force our opponent to put a Night Marcher in his hand, reducing his damage output just a little bit. We'll also counter the Stadium for sure as well. And hopefully we can top deck something nice, a Draw Supporter in the next turn. So we'll bench the Froakie, we will counter the Stadium, then we will attach an energy to the Frogadier, go with the water duplicates. Hopefully we can get 3 Frogadiers, and we do. We really need it as many as we can. And we have a Greninja with the baby water Shuriken to use in the next turn. Unfortunately, he cannot knock out the Pumpkaboo in 1 hit. With the Mist Slash, that is definitely a problem. So we might have to promote the Froakie and go for a bubble while we evolve into our break. And hopefully hit that paralysis with the Froakie. If there's anything I would like to top deck right now, it's the Ace Trainer. Ace Trainer would be so OP right now. Get that VS Seeker out of my opponent's hands. We know he has it in hand. We saw him search for it with the Trainers Mail. We know he can use it to prevent Shurikens in the next turn. Discards a Hex Maniac. Goes for... I didn't see why he went for... I think he's out of Shaman. I think he only runs 3 Shaman. I'll be quite surprised if he runs more. We haven't seen Puzzles of Time yet. There's an Acrobike. Maybe my opponent doesn't run puzzles. Maybe he just runs Acrobike instead. You never know. He's down to 17 cards, so I'm quite surprised we haven't seen those puzzles just yet. What does he discard there? He discards a Fighting Fury Belt, so he probably got another Fighting Fury Belt with it. Fighting Fury Belt is really good in the Greninja matchup. We have a Startling Megaphone in our deck, but we just can't seem to draw into it. There is a puzzle. My opponent is going to use 2 Puzzles of Time at the same time, I believe. Get back Hex Maniac, most likely, and the DCE. That could be a possibility as well. Or maybe he's just using 1 puzzle, but I don't think he is. It looks like he's looking through his discard pile to see what he can get back. DCE and Dimension Valley. Okay, that's interesting. No Hex Maniac, that's good. That's again 1 less Hex Maniac that we will see played. Counters the Stadium, is going to go for the knockout. Starts powering up the Joltik on the bench. We'll get a knockout on a Joltik unless we see the Hex Maniac get played. And there is the Hex Maniac. My opponent is going to play that Hex Maniac. Oh my goodness. What a turn. What a turn from my opponent. It gets the knockout right there. We will promote the Froakie. And what we are going to do is we are going to bubble. Hopefully stall my opponent that way. We get a level ball. That is good. We can get another Froakie going. We should have one. Or we could get the Dunsparce going. Which has free retreat. Flip a coin. I want to get the Froakie going actually. And we will hit for the bubble, counter the stadium. Hopefully get that heads. We desperately need a heads right now. Yes, there it is. Paralysis with the Froakie. Look at that. And I think my opponent has no way around that at this point in the game. I don't believe he runs switch. Maybe we can force him to use VS Seeker for teammates and teammates for an escape rope or something like that. He could definitely play one copy of switch or escape rope, but maybe he does not. Maybe they are priced as well. He runs acrobike. Maybe he replaced them with acrobikes. Oh, I'm so glad we were able to stall, but we really need our top deck to come through right now. Our top deck has not come through whatsoever. We need that top deck, and my opponent just passes the turn. We get an Ace Trainer. My goodness, the top deck is real. We will for sure Ace Trainer my opponent. See what we can get. There is a Greninja. Alright, we need some more energies though. We get a Rare Candy. Alright, that Rare Candy is going to come in handy here. We will Rare Candy into this Froakie here. And then we will use a Baby Water Shuriken on the Joltik on the bench. Knock out that Joltik, and then we will knock out the Pumpkaboo with our Greninja. There is a break. It was just a little too late, that break. Or, yeah, because it's not too late, it's just a little inconvenient at this point, since our Greninja here in the active spot will most likely get knocked out. So we will hit for the Moonlight Slash. I will also return that energy to our hands. We bring ourselves up to speed with our opponents. At least we have one break ready to go, and we even get a Startling Megaphone for the occasion that my opponent can get out a Fighting Fury Belt. We can get rid of that Fighting Fury Belt. Does my opponent find a Floatstone? He has a Floatstone. Oh my goodness, and his Sycamore. He had a really good hand from that Ace Trainer. He had one of the best hands he could have gotten. Our Ace Trainer kind of screwed us over by giving our opponent those cards. That exact combination of cards was really good. My opponent must have been so happy to see those cards in hand. But we will for sure still see the knockout here, I think. And that's because our Ace Trainer gave our opponent the ability to look through his deck. With the Sycamore, discard some cards. Although it seems like he has trouble finding the DCE. He's going to thin out his deck a little bit more. And he must actually be careful of the deck out. He's down to 7 cards. We know he has 2 more VS Seekers. Discards the escape rope, so he did have an escape rope in deck. Luckily he didn't manage to get it when he needed to. And he even discards another card with Acrobike. There is a DCE. We will promote the Greninja Break, that's for sure. And we will probably try to dig for another Greninja so we can evolve our Frogadiers on the bench. And we'll go for the Ace Trainer most likely. I know that will fill up our opponent's deck a little bit. But I think Ace Trainer will not fail us this time around. My opponent definitely needs to attack. He's going to VS Seeker for Hex Maniac, I believe. There is the Hex Maniac. That is okay. We know he only has one more VS Seeker left. And we will promote the break, hit for a miss slash with the break. I think we are definitely in a favorable position right now, even though our break can get one hit KO'd. But we have some backup Frogadiers ready to go. I will get rid of that Flowstone for sure. That's gonna help us out a bit as well. And then we will attach an energy and we will go for the Ace Trainer. Get the Ace Trainer in hand. Let's see, how many VS Seekers have we used? None. Oh, and there is, my opponent conceded the match. Wait, that was weird. That was so weird. I think we saw that concede indeed. Oh my goodness, my opponents gave up. He gave up. We took the win against Nightmarch with Greninja Break. I was looking through my deck there, through my discard pile for the VS Seeker, but I think it was glitched. I think that's what happened there, because we just used the VS Seeker, but it was not in our discard pile. But anyways, we would have Ace Trainered, we would have taken a knockout on a Joltik. My opponent would have had no way of retreating the Shaman. He doesn't run 2 Floatstones, I'm pretty sure. So all he could have done was attach the DCE and hit for a Sky Return, or yeah, that's all he could have done, because he only has 1 DCE left. So, and that would have allowed us to take another knockout in a turn after that. And I think that would have sealed it for us. So understandable that my opponent conceded there. Greninja MVP, not even the break against Pumpkaboo. We only dealt 110 damage versus 460 for my opponent, yet we still took the game, and my opponent took so much longer as well. It took 9 minutes, we only took 3 minutes, but we were top decking anyways. Let's see if we can find ourselves one more final opponent. The last opponent of the day has presented himself and is BT Rock 74 with a Psychic and a colorless deck. Most likely Trevenant Break, which is very cool, because I would love to showcase Greninja Break against Trevenant Break. So I really hope that it is Trevenant Break, and I hope that we get to do some things without getting item locked straight away. That's the ideal situation. And mainly we want to find our Rough Seas if it is Trevenant Break, and counter our opponent's dimension values, heal up with the Rough Seas if we can while we set up. Looks like we are going to go first, so we will for sure go first, try and set up here. If we can get a setup like the last game, that would be incredible. The first mulligan of the matchup has occurred. We'll have to reshuffle our hand. This was actually an okay hand. I wouldn't have minded starting off with that hand, really. So let's see if we can possibly get a similar hand. Alright, this is a little bit of a trickier hand already. We do get some item cards to use, so at least there's that. We can use the item cards, so we won't draw into them. My opponent starts with a Shaman. That is pretty bad for my opponent. We'll get out a Froakie. So we have a backup Froakie. Then we will take, we'll use the Professor's Letter, thin out our deck a little bit, get 2 energy in hand, and then we'll take a look at the Trainer's Mail, see what we can get from there. There's another, there's a Dive Ball actually. Do I want to go for the Skyla or do I want to go for the Dive Ball? I'm gonna go for the Dive Ball, use the item card while I can, and get out the break. I think I'm gonna get the break in hand, because we have a pretty darn good amount of cards right now that we can use in the following turns. Even if we get item locked, we can evolve into the Frogadier in the next turn. I'm not yet going to attach an energy, not just yet. You never know, if I attach to the Froakie that my opponent Lysandres out the Froakie on the bench, and then I would have to attach another energy, which otherwise I could use this energy for a Water Shuriken. So we are going to stay put, keep energy in hand, wait for our turn to evolve into our Frogadier, hopefully make it seem like we have a bad hand, which we kind of do. This is not the best hand, but at least we have a hand we can work with while our opponent gets out the Trevenant Break. There's a Floatstone. Does he have a Phantom? Uses a Sycamore, discards his entire hand. Look at that. There is a Trevenant, so this is for sure a Trevenant deck. Discards a Judge as well, and an invisible card right there. So the invisible glitch is still in the game. Okay, it's an AZ. He cannot use a Wally. He can, however, use the Ascension. That's for sure. He can do that. Does he miss out on the energy? If he misses out on the energy or the Dimension Valley, we will not see an Ascension. And that's what I am hoping for. He's most likely going to get out another Shaman with that Ultra Ball. There's the energy. Never mind. Will he go for a Shaman? Or will he keep the Ultra Ball in hand to get a Trevenant break? He's going to put the Shaman down. He already had another Shaman in hand. The Bursting Balloon is okay. We will not attack our opponent in the next turn. What we will do is we will go for the water duplicates, and hopefully we will top deck a Rough Seas or something to draw into a Rough Seas at some point. There's the Ascension, there's the item lock. So both me and my opponent have an okay start. My opponent had to discard a fair amount of resources to get his start off. We top deck the Muscle Band just a little bit too late there. Muscle Band could have helped us out quite a bit in taking down these Trevenants a little bit easier or a little bit quicker. We water duplicates for 2 Frogadiers, so 1 is prized. But at least we have cards in our hand to use with these Frogadiers. I'm probably going to let the Frogadier in the active spot get knocked out. I'm kind of expecting my opponent to go for a Tree Slam and not a Silent Fear. Yeah, I'm kind of expecting that. What we are going to do is we are going to go for a Moonlight Slash. And then we are also going to go for a Water Shuriken, I think. Oh, my opponent gets out a Wobbuffet. Interesting. Did he just Ultra Ball for a Wobbuffet? I think he did. And a VS Seeker for a Sycamore. I'm gonna call it. Or a Judge. Oh, he goes for a Judge. Oh, man. That is huge. Judges us. Why would he judge us? Why would he think we have a great hand? I don't understand why my opponent would think that. Oh, and we get a terrible hand from that. There is a Silent Fear. So at least we have a Shauna here. I'll attach 1 energy and then I'll Shauna. It's the only thing we can do. We need to hope for some good cards. Oh man, this is not good whatsoever. Might as well use another water duplicates. Yeah, that Judge screwed us over, and I don't know why my opponent would go for the Judge. We had so many cards in hand that we didn't seem to be able to use. I thought my opponent might think that, clearly not. Goes for an Ultra Ball, is going to get out a Phantom. The fact that we were not able to put damage out this turn is what's going to cost us the game, I think. Unless we can miraculously find some more Greninjas and a Rough Seas. We just need our Rough Seas, really. There's the first knockout from my opponent. This is looking pretty bad for us. Can we top deck a Greninja? Oh, we do not. We, however, could Lysandre out a Shaman, but I think that's the worst. I think the Sycamore is better here. There is a Greninja. No Rough Seas though. So our Frogadiers will go down. Oh man. We are having a terrible game here. We will hit for the Moonlight Slash. Try to get a knockout on the Trevenant in 2 turns. Hopefully we can get a knockout on the Phantom in the next turn with our Greninja break. And hopefully we can find that Stadium. Never mind, there is the Trevenant. Yeah, our opponent is a little bit lucky here that we had such bad draws. And a Silent Fear for the knockouts, bringing him down to 3 prizes. This is looking really bad. If we had had that Rough Seas, we could have made a comeback for sure. And my opponent still hasn't found a Dimension Valley, which is interesting. Maybe he's keeping Dimension Valley in hand. Alright, we'll evolve into the break. And what we are going to do is we are going to Water Shuriken onto I'm going to Water Shuriken onto the Wobbuffet, I think. The Wobbuffet is a pretty big threat, because it can come out and knock us out in one hit. I will bench the Dunsparce just so we have a backup ready. I know it's an easy target, but we might get knocked out here very soon. And that would lose us the game, so we need to have another benched Pokemon. At least we take a knockout. And there is the Rough Seas. Rough Seas was prized. Do we stay alive? My opponent promotes the Wobbuffet, knowing that he can KO our Greninja Break here. But he needs that energy attachment. Can he get that energy attachment? Can we get some luck here? Can we have our opponent fail the KO? We just need one failure here. That's all we need. And there is a max potion on the Wobbuffet. That's okay. We can still one hit KO it in the next turn. Another break comes out. And a bursting balloon on the Wobbuffet. Does he have a supporter in hand? No, he just passes the turn. Excellent stuff. This gives us a turn of item cards, and we might actually be able to come back here. What we are going to do is we are going to use the Rough Seas. We are going to bench some Froakies. We need some Froakies on the bench here. And then we are going to try and dig for our Super Rod. Let's attach the Muscle Band to the Greninja Break. Excellent stuff here. Wow, my opponent should have promoted the Trevenant, to be honest, but he was trying to get a knockout. I don't know why he didn't promote the Trevenant while he knew he had... while he knew he didn't have the cards in hand to pull off the attack with the Wobbuffet. Let's see. Let's go for the... We cannot go for the Water Shuriken, I forgot. There's no real point attacking with the Greninja Break. What I'm going to do is I'm going to power up the Froakie on the bench, and I'm going to dig for the Super Rod. We need to get that Super Rod right now, otherwise we are pretty... oh, we get a Buddy-Buddy Rescue. That's really good as well. Let's go for the Buddy-Buddy Rescue. Get a Frogadier in hand, so we can start evolving that Froakie that we have there. A Hex Maniac would be good as well, but we don't run it in this deck. Opponent gets back a Trevenant, we will get back a Frogadier. Hopefully we can get another Frogadier from the prizes. And then we shall... Let's see, what shall we do? Should we retreat? And that's the question. I don't think so. I'm going to leave the Greninja in the active spot and end my turn. Get rid of that bursting balloon. See if my opponent can find a float stone or an energy. Something to work with. He just gets the Trevenant that he had in hand from our Buddy-Buddy Rescue. So you might see another pass of the turn. There is a Lysandre on the Froakie, which is okay. We are going to evolve anyway. We are going to evolve here with the Frogadier. Do we have a Greninja in our discard pile? We do not, so we have two in hand, one in play. We should have another one somewhere. Might as well use this Startling Megaphone while I can. And the question is here, do I go with the Skyla for a Super Rod, or do I go with the Wally and start attacking? Or do I go with the Lysandre possibly? Do I go with the Lysandre actually and Lysandre out a Shaman? We have several options here. What would be the best to do? I think I'm going to try to Wally, see if I can get a Greninja. Yes, we can, and then we can retreat into the Greninja Break on the bench. We can go for a Water Shuriken. No, wait, we cannot, because the Wobbuffet is still stuck in the active spot, but we can at least attack. And what I'm going to use is the Shadow Stitching, so that my opponent cannot use a Shaman if he gets a Shaman in hand. Moonlight Slash is not a knockout, so Shadow Stitching it is. for 60. And then we can get rid of that Wobbuffet and we can start using our water shurikens once the Wobbuffet is gone. What I'll probably go for in the next turn is a Super Rod. I'll go for a Skyla for a Super Rod. And now our opponent is having the bad hand that we had at the start. That is really, really good for us. We get another VS Seeker. We could VS Seeker for a Fisherman and try to get back our energies that way. Let's first Skyla. Skyla gets back. Gets a Super Rod. There is a Super Rod. We have a Fisherman in deck. I think I'm going to use my VS Seekers here. So, because in the next turn we will get item locked, and I'm going to shuffle back a Frogadier, a Froakie, and a Greninja. Then I'm going to use my VS Seekers. Just get those supporters in hand. I'm going to get a Shauna. And I'm also going to get the Fisherman. I think those are the cards we will need in the rest of the game. And then we will hit for the Shadow Stitching. Get that KO. In the meantime, we have completely healed up. There's a Sycamore. I don't really want to use a Sycamore. I want to keep these Greninjas in my deck, so I'll probably go with the Shauna. And we might actually see a concede right now if my opponent doesn't top deck what he wants. We have the Rough Seas to heal up. The Dunsparce is going to be an easy knockout for my opponent. That's a problem. But I had to put it down there. We might have not gotten another basic, so I had to put it down to make sure we would stay in the game. And we will just heal up those damage counters. Then we will... do you want to go for a knockout actually? I think I'm actually going to go for a knockout instead here. I'm not going to use a Shauna. I'm going to get back the energies from my discard pile with the Fisherman. And I'm going to Water Shuriken. 1 energy on the Trevenant break. And then I'm going to KO it with the Moonlight Slash. Get back an energy in my hand. And next turn we can just repeat, rinse and repeat, and take another knockout on that Trevenant break from my opponent. And I think that might be game then. So we are pulling off the comeback here. There it is, there is the concede. Oh wow, what a way to end today's episode. Leave a like if you enjoyed knocking Trevenant break out with our Greninja. I was gonna use a saying there, knocking it off his socks or something like that. Is that a saying? I don't know. Something with socks and knocking. I think that's a saying in English, but I've forgotten how it goes. Look at that. 2 breaks are the MVPs. Greninja break versus Trevenant break. We did output 50 more damage at the end there, and we drew into a fair amount of cards just because my opponent broke the item lock. I think that's his main downfall. Promoting that Wobbuffet kinda allowed us to set up and get going for the win. Take that much deserved win with Greninja break after all those terrible hands. So that's going to be it for today's episode. Leave a like if you enjoy seeing me get annoyed by terrible hands, and subscribe to my channel for more terrible hands and for more deck ideas. I hope you have a truly Karptastic day, and I will be seeing you tomorrow with an extra episode of Meta Monday featuring a Mewtwo variant because it was requested by one of you.
Karp, 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 Karp. Karp, 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 Karp.